Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Private Duelists Club here. I am back with another Spellbook Runick deck profile for SlimYGO's channel. He has once again been so gracious as to allow me to upload on his channel, and so I'm back with another version of the deck. So I've been having a lot of success with this deck lately. 2 weeks ago, I finished top 8 at a regional. And then this last weekend, so within a couple of days of me uploading this to his channel, I finished top 4 at an OTS Championship here in England. So I'm a dual resident, so I'm from the US, but I live in the UK currently. I've lived here for the past 10 years or so. So I do the North American remote regionals, and then I play in a lot of local events here in the UK. So that means that in the last 2 weeks, I've gotten invites both to Euros and American Nationals with the same deck. After the regional, I made a couple of adjustments to the list. So this is the current up-to-date, what I'm currently playing on this day and going forward and then the next few weeks version of the deck. So the profile of my channel, which you can also check out because it has some more in-depth explanations of certain theoretical aspects of the deck. The profile of my channel is slightly out of date to what I play now and going forward as I've optimized particularly the side deck ratios. So for the deck itself, we start off with, we're actually technically, from a theoretical perspective, we're actually just playing 40 cards. This is, Patrick Hoban theory. The reason why we play Upstart in this deck at 43 is because we play a deck that has one hard garnet that if we draw it, really lowers the ceiling output of the deck. And then also Upstart is actually Pot of Greed in this deck. And the reason for that is because anytime that we resolve Spellbook of Judgment and we're still holding an Upstart Goblin in our hand, we activate Upstart Goblin, and then not only do we get the initial draw, but then during the end phase, we also get the add off of Spellbook of Judgment. And you can play this, if you don't like Upstart, you can play this exact list without these 3 cards. But what you end up finding is that in actuality, your ability to get to 3 spells without having to do wonky plays like making a so cute boss that you then destroy with its own effect to bring back with a shot that you hard drew and things like that that aren't really intuitive, you end up having to do a lot more of those when you don't play the Upstarts. This card is also, in a weird way, a combo piece. A thought that I've had in the past is that you can main deck this and then you can side deck an Engage package with Shark Cannon and Widow Anchor and stuff. For when you go second, so you can side these out, and it's 1-to-1 Engage is just better Upstart when you're breaking boards, obviously. But the problem with main decking something like Engage would be that it dictates that you play your turn in a certain way that isn't always, from a spellbook perspective, the best way to play those cards. But for the Upstarts themselves, we just play the 3. This is great. I think it's mandatory. Anytime you play a Judgment package, I think you just have to be playing these because they just provide so much for so little. You just have to be conscious of life points, but as long as you're putting the pressure on your opponent, you're out grinding them, you're not sort of solely focusing on milling them out, you are also trying to poke in with attacks with F0 so that they don't think they can just stall you to time and all that, then this card is, in those scenarios, actually quite good. Then we have the Spellbook package. So we've got 3 Spellbook Petition of Prophecy. This is the Stratos. It adds all of your Spellbook spells. 2 Jourdan. We play 2 Jourdan because we always want to see, we always want to have 1 in deck, and when you play 2, the chances of drawing both, there's only 1%, so 1 out of 99 games. Whereas when you play 1, you will see all copies of Jourdan, which is worse than seeing just a single copy of Jourdan in the opening hand. Something around sort of 20% of games. So you always play 2. And even then, hard drawing Jourdan isn't even that bad of a thing, because if you hard draw Jourdan, Blue Boy, and a Runick spell, you can actually play around Ash on Judgment and still get to Jourdan by discarding the Jourdan for Hugin, making Celine with your F0 line, and then bringing this back with the Celine. So hard drawing Jourdan is actually, in a weird way, another way to play around hand traps in this deck, and learning how to play around hand traps with this deck is probably the most difficult skill because the lines are not immediately obvious and intuitive at first. When you first start playing this deck, you feel like every hand trap kills you, but over time you learn how to build your boards in certain ways and insulate with F0 or bait and imperm with the Hugin and things like that. And then that's when you start to build the the ability to reliably make your board with this deck, even in formats like the one we're playing in. For the Spellbook package itself, we've got 3 Judgment, cards insanely busted, 3 Secrets, 2 Fate. I'm currently playing 2 Knowledge. I do like 3 Knowledge usually, just because it is such a high roll card in this deck, because it really lets you see like just a lot more runic spells than you would otherwise. But somebody posted some convincing math in the Runick Discord last week where with the numbers that I'm playing in a 40 card deck, obviously I'm playing the upstarts, Spellbook of Knowledge at 3 is actually technically still dead around 1/4 of the time that you draw it. And so that was enough to convince me to try it out at 2. At the OTS Championship, it did feel like my hand spread was a little bit more consistent than it had been in the weeks prior, so I think I'm happy with that at 2 going forward. But generally speaking, I think 2 or 3 both are valid. There is a world where you actually only play 1 and like 1 Fate if you want to play like a super minimal package. So I'm playing 2 Fountain for the runic spells, 3 Tip, 3 Curses, 3 Flashing Fire, 3 Destruction, 3 Slumber, and then I'm playing a Golden Droplet. I was playing Smiting Storm last week, but I had too many opponents that were trying to do at the regional a lot of really cheeky things like stalling for time and all that. And plus, this is like the only other runic spell besides Slumber that you can just activate on your first turn when your EMZ is taken up. And in Spellbook, because you've got, you're really trying to get that spell count up to 3 or 4, that does actually come up and is relevant, even though giving them the extra card doesn't feel amazingly great. Then for the non-engine, we're playing 3 Droplet, we're playing 3 Dark Ruler. We're playing these because the extra deck is constructed in such a way that going second, we can sort of, after dropping one of these, we can start to sort of go through the opponent's board, banishing a thing here, popping another thing, bouncing another thing. And then we have Jourdan on the crackback then to invalidate whatever they would then do to our own personal setup. And the Spellbook of Judgment ensures that then on our 4th turn, we've got enough to then stabilize and sort of take control of the game. So I think these are really good main deck. If I could play 6 Droplet instead of 3 and 3, I would obviously, but I can't. This is the only other card that's like very simplistic, crack the board, which I think is what this deck really needs into stuff like Snake Eye, because you can play around the hand traps fairly well, as long as you know what you're doing, but what you can't really play around is like all the stuff that they put on board. You don't care about Princess, obviously, because you play Hugin and Munin as well, and both of those really let you play into the into the Princess lines fairly well. But you do care about like the Appaloosa and the IP and the SP, banishing the Fountain and so on. So you drop one of these, and then you do your runic stuff, and it is, in theory, quite decent. You do kind of lose to the hand rip build game 1 if they go first. So you have to be very strategic about how much deck information you give them, when you scoop, etc., etc. In that matchup. But then the side deck, we play a bunch of hand traps to help mitigate the game 3. And then the last engine requirement is the Ghost Trick Shot. We play this because it lets us make F0, which not only is a separate win condition from Jourdan. So I've won a lot of games where like they've hand trapped me to death, and then I just make F0 and sit on that in like a runic fountain, and that is often enough on its own to win games, especially simplified like hand trap games. So F0 being like your final push is really good in that sense. It's really good going second too, because it lets you steal cards from their board. Just overall, you have to play the shot, I think. Then for the extra deck, this is where the board breaking element comes in. I used to play Gary. I've dropped it for an access code because I've realized that Celine into the access code going second is just infinitely better, because this deck, the main problem that this deck has going second is that you can usually blank the board, but you really struggle with, you know, popping the board, banishing the stuff, or bouncing it. So we play SP as well. So what we end up doing is we do the usual Ghost Trick line, where we make with the Angel of Mischiefs. So obviously we can make these going first, but then what we're doing instead now, and this is something that I started doing during the OTS Championship, is we do the Ghost Trick line until we get to the point where we've got one of these on field and we've revived the Soapkeep boss. Then we will link the Angel of Mischief with another random runic from the extra deck, probably Munin. We make the SP, we banish a card, we make the Celine, we revive the Soapkeep boss, and then we make access code, and we have 2 pops with the access code. So what that lets us do is that actually lets us get rid of 3 bodies on the board, two pops and 1 banish, just using sort of an engine. So that combines really well with the Dark Rulers, compared to what I was doing before, where I was really having to like slowly get rid of their stuff with like Fate and Flashing Fire and so on. And the other really nice thing about this package is that you then do have, with the Fate and the Flashing Fire, you've got sort of 5 total ways to pop something on their field, which is then 5 total into a board, which is just how many monsters maximum a player can have. So reorganizing this a little bit after explaining that combo, we do have the Ghost Trick package, which is these two. Going first, we use them to make this. Going second, we use them to make access code, depending on game state. Armored Kappa is for when we can't get to F-Zero, or if we don't have a way to protect Jourdan with like Sleipnir or Fate or Slumber. And then for the Runick fusions, for the rest of the Xyz, we play Mannequin Cat, which is really important because it lets us get to Droll. It lets us get to Jourdan under Droll. It lets us get to Gendo or Jourdan under Shifter. It lets us get to, for example, it lets us get to Jourdan under Valor. It lets us get to Jourdan under Ogre. Mannequin Cat just does a lot, and I think it's really important in the deck. And then we play Typhon. Depending on the matchup, after you do the access code line, you can actually overlay the Typhon onto the access code and get like an extra bounce. That could also be really relevant depending on what the opponent is playing. And so because of that, I am including Typhon as well. And in some matchups, normal summon Blue Boy overlay Typhon can just straight up win the game too. And then for the Runick fusions, we play single Munin, we play the 2 Hugin, and then we play the Sleipnir. So that's the extra deck. The only major sort of addition from theoretical perspective is that access code. But having the access code just gives you another way to break boards going second, which the deck doesn't really struggle going second in that sense, but what it does struggle is it struggles with not blanking the board, but it used to have the problem of outing the board. But playing the access code fixes that. We play 3 hard going first cards. We play 1 Wisdom. Wisdom does the same thing as Dark Bribe, but it's searchable. So we play one of this. We always play the searchable engine version of a card before we play the non-engine version of it. So we play the 1 Wisdom, and then we play 2 Bribe because I wanted 3 hard going first cards. These all help us answer cards like Imperm, Droplet, Evenly in the case of Bribe. If they evenly you chain the Wisdom, and then you call, depends on the format, but usually I call Trap for Imperm. But you can call Spell if you think they're on like a straight breaker deck and they're going to go like Talents and, you know, Thrust and Change of Heart and things like that as well. Then the Wisdom can come in handy in that sense as well. But I think you just have to play 3. I got hit with a lot of board breakers last weekend, and so I just needed it. This is your anti-flu, anti-cash, anti-shifter card. You side this in, and when they shifter you, you make this in defense, and cash and flu just can't play. Then for the anti-Snake Eye hand rip stuff, you play 3 Dogwood, 3 Nibiru. The reason you play this package is because game 3, these are identical, and that they're both high impact hand traps. I'm operating off the assumption that I lose game 1 if I lose the die roll against Snake Eye hand rip, which, God forbid something incredible, in my testing, you don't win that game 1 99% of the time. So what you do is you generally win game 2 because you play into hand traps really well with this deck. And then game 3, you hope to draw 1 of a 6 of to stop the hand rip. Ideally, actually, you'd prefer to draw Dogwood, because what Dogwood will let you do is put a time clock on them, and it will make their board, they basically have to pass on no board, otherwise they just lose, because with all the drawing and searching, the game state gets really gummy, and you can just drag the duel out for quite a long time, game 3 with like 10 or 15 minutes left. And then for the shifter decks, I played just a bunch of stun stuff. So a couple of storms, a couple of evenlies, and then a duster. I think these are really good for stun, flu, Kashtira, voiceless, anything like that would otherwise be not per se a hard matchup, but a matchup that would maybe take a little bit longer than I'd like. This just gives me the option to, if a game is theoretically winnable, but I know that I can just side these in and blow them out, it gives me that option. So these plus like the Gendo just means that your games 2 and 3 versus Kashtira and Flu are basically like 99% in your favor. Like they're 99-1 matchups, which I really like. But overall, the deck feels great. I've had a lot of success with it the past couple of weeks. So that is, once again, that is an invite to Euros and an invite to North American World Championship qualifier, back-to-back, week on week, with Spellbook. And I think my version of the deck, honestly, is just getting more optimized. It's getting better. It's getting more improved as the format carries on. And, you know, hush hush, I don't actually know for sure if this is going to be the case yet, but I think this might be my Nationals deck. European Nationals, anyway. I would not be testing this for the Infinite Forbidden format for Euros and American Nationals, purely due to the fact that I think that once that format comes out, you really do have to be playing like a proper hand trap deck, and ideally a shifter deck. So something like Ritual Beast, I think, for example, would be a really good meta call for that format, and something that I would be testing extensively for that coming up. So that's everything as far as the deck goes. If you guys have any questions, please do feel free to leave them in the comments. I will always get back to them and reply and carry on this discussion. And once again, as well, thank you to SlimYGO for continuing to allow me to share my Rogue deck content on his channel. I do hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.